not even the Google brand, and that's a very powerful brand, as you all know. It's one of the most admired companies in the world, voted most innovative company. No, we're not here to talk about Google. We're here to talk about the most important brand you'll ever market, brand you. And virtual branding and social selling is especially important for sellers, for sales professionals to really understand, because if you don't leverage it as powerful as Google is, you won't be leveraging things that your competitors are leveraging. You won't be leveraging things that your clients and prospects are using. So it's important, when you think about it, to build a brand for yourself online as well as in person. Social selling and virtual branding on LinkedIn can help you do that. If you want to expand your network, shorten the sales cycle, LinkedIn can help you do that. Before we start, let's look at an interesting story of a salesperson who transcended the old world of selling and is very successful now in the new world of selling. And Barbara Corcoran, who is a salesperson in a different area than yours. And Barbara has an interesting story. She moved to New York in her late 20s. She had 22 different jobs, cycled through them all, more than I even had, and started out, went to New York City and established a real estate brokerage business with her boyfriend. And after about 6 months, she figured out he was having an affair with his office secretary. So she says, I'm out of here. And they divvy up the assets. She gets $1,000, and she goes to start her own firm. As she's leaving, he goes, you'll never be able to make it without me. And she starts her own company. She calls it the Corcoran Group. And at this time, this was the mid-1980s, and it was a time that there wasn't a lot of information about residential real estate prices in New York. It was a very secretive world, and it was run by wealthy women in mink coats that had keys to all the best apartments and kept all the information very secret. And so Barbara saw this hole in the marketplace, and she thought, I'm going to fill that hole. Her new firm, in its first year, just sold 11 apartments. So she added up the sales prices of all 11 apartments, divided by 11, and came up with $242,000 as the average price. And she wrote a report that she called the Corcoran Report. And she made 60 Xerox copies, sent them to 60 reporters at the New York Times, and it landed on the front page of the real estate section of the New York Times. And the lead sentence was, according to Barbara Corcoran, expert on high-end real estate in New York, blah, blah, blah. So overnight, she went from a nobody to somebody that had a brand, that had a visibility as a strong leader. Then, for her second issue of the Corcoran Report, she thought, I'd like to expand my network. I'd like to have wealthy people endorsing me. And when you think of a very famous person in New York real estate that you would be proud to have endorsed yourself, who comes to mind in the 80s who's still very prominent today? Who comes? Okay, but also, no, Donald Trump is it. Donald Trump is it. So she wanted Donald Trump to endorse her. And so she calls his office, and she says to the secretary, I'm doing the second issue of the Corcoran Report on the most expensive residential buildings in New York City. And I'd like to interview Mr. Trump. And the secretary goes, Barbara who? And she says, well, there was a feature on, in the New York Times. So she said, he's very busy. I really can't set up an appointment. And then she said, oh, that's too bad, because according to my calculation, at that time he was advertising Trump Tower in the 1980s, and he was advertising as the most expensive building in New York City. And she said, well, according to my calculations, Trump Tower is not number one. She gets a meeting with Donald Trump, telling him he's number two. So she has the meeting with Donald Trump, and he says to her, here's how to calculate the average sale price. And of course she knew that there were other ways of calculating it and that most of them his building was the most expensive, but she let him convince her. And then he said to her at the end of the meeting, I'm running a major ad campaign right now on Trump Tower, and I'll put in each ad that it's the most expensive residential building according to the Corcoran report. So then she became, even more successful because she had Donald Trump's endorsement. So one of the things that I want to leave you with is you want to attach an idea to yourself. Branding is about, my first rule of branding is you want to attach an idea to yourself. Barbara attached an idea that she was, a real estate expert, and she had very little experience, but she attached that idea to herself. It was a different idea because at that time, no one was filling that place in the marketplace. So you want to attach a different idea. In a sea of goldfish, you want to be a green fish. You want to attach an idea that's authentic, that's something that's true to you. And you want to attach an idea that's relevant to the marketplace. Anyway, here's my Donald Trump picture. This is Donald Trump's reaction when he found out that he wasn't going to be #1 building. And so we ran this ad campaign, the most expensive residential building in New York City, which leads me to my second rule of branding, is that you want to network. You want to network for influential people. The best way, as marketers always know, the best way to sell yourself is to get other people to do it for you. Then in the mid-1990s, during another slump in the real estate market in New York, Barbara Corcoran read that Madonna was looking for an apartment in Manhattan. And at the time, she didn't have any celebrity clients. And she thought, she wanted to have them, she didn't have them. She read that Madonna was looking for apartments, so she called all the news stations and said, I have a point of view on what apartments Madonna should be looking at. And so she got on the evening news, and she was introduced as the broker to the stars. And she, as I said, she didn't have any celebrity clients, but as a result of that interview, she got a call the next day from Richard Gere's agent saying, Richard Gere wants to find an apartment in Manhattan. Do you think you can meet with him? She said, I think I can fit it in. And so, which leads to my third rule of branding is that it's all about perceptions. Branding is all about perceptions. It doesn't matter who's better or who's, it's really what perceptions are. When I was a kid and, people would make fun of me, I'd, go crying to my mother and she'd say, forget about what other people say and what other people think. What's important is what you think. But it's not true. It is important what other people think. That was bad advice. And branding and virtual branding is about building positive perceptions for brand you. And it's really, branding is about what you do to the minds of other people by what you're saying. And that leads to my fourth principle of branding. That you always want to be expanding into new markets. How has the market changed? And one thing that's going on in the whole, technology area, according to Gartner, 80% of marketing tech decisions will be made by, lines of business by 2016. So there's a lot of technology buyers that aren't the traditional IT guys that are, going to be part of it. So thinking of new markets and how to present yourself well in those new markets. So then, flash forward, Barbara sells her business for $70 million. You see her on the Shark Tank now. She's sort of brought her brand into the modern world. She's very active on LinkedIn, and television, other social media. And it was interesting because she wrote a blog a couple of weeks ago that she did a mailing to her clients and prospects. And she said, what was interesting was I got more calls about this marketing campaign than anything else I did. And what was interesting wasn't what was in the package, it was the stamp that I used. And, she did a stamp because she was, pretty well known. It's not something we could do and get away with, but she did a stamp with her name, with her picture on it, from Daimyo, and it got everybody talking, which, leads my next principle of branding is you want to think outside in. You want to think of what reaction do I want to get from buyers, and what do I have to do to get that reaction? So if you want to get in the New York Times, you need to provide information, or you want to be quoted by the media. You want to be providing fresh information that no one else has provided them with. If you want to get endorsed by Donald Trump and you don't know him, you need to think of, what is his mindset? How could I get him to take the call? So you want to think of, who is my market, and what do I have to do to reach that market? And my sixth principle of branding is you want to disguise your message. The branding world is all about, commercials that they rarely go into a really detailed explanation of what the product is or what the service is. It's really all about, image, how the brand makes you feel, the kind of people that use that product. So it's much more effective to sell your story, to wrap your brand in a story. So to tell stories and do interesting things that clients and prospects are interested in. And so, here's Barbara today. This is her LinkedIn profile. She's an influencer on LinkedIn. So she's, one of the bloggers that they feature, along with Jack Welch and other well-known people. Which leads me, to my seventh rule of branding is you want to use LinkedIn to build brand and increase sales. Here's an interesting statistic that 64% of all corporate website traffic comes from LinkedIn. So it's a very powerful area to build your brand because so many people look at things there and then go to visit a corporate website. Facebook is decreasing. It was 30%, now it's about 17%, and Twitter is, in the teens as well. But it's really dominated by LinkedIn. It's got 180 million members, but it's a very, very powerful force for buyers. So, all of the changes that have happened in the sales world and in the marketing world have come about because of the internet and how it's transformed everything. And we're all familiar with the marketing funnel, the old way of marketing and selling, where at the top it was a funnel, there were a lot of products, that's when advertising took place, and then it narrowed down as people went through the sales process, and then there was a lot of activity at the other end, whether it was point of purchase or one-to-one sales. Today the image is a double-ended funnel, because clients and prospects have access to so much information. They educate themselves a lot. So it's push-pull marketing that's taking place. It's not just people pushing their message out, but also clients pulling the message in. One of the research studies showed that 57% of the sales decision are made by clients, are made by prospects before they even call somebody to find out more information. So what's the mindset of top social sellers? There's been some studies done, almost 90% of them, use LinkedIn as the focus because that's where the fish are that they want to get. They put a lot of attention into doing their profile. Over 40% rate their profile as well done. So they take the time to write a very good summary. They focus a lot on what the headline, the visual, their job experience. Instead of just a couple of sentences, they really tell a story. They talk in terms of framing it almost like a business presentation. Here was the challenge, here's what was accomplished, here were the obstacles when they do it. About 70% of them say they spend 6 hours a week, like roughly an hour a day on LinkedIn. So they really spend time using LinkedIn. They use more capabilities of LinkedIn than other sellers, the top social sellers. About half use the paid version of LinkedIn. Half don't use the paid version, but half do. And they claim that 45% claim they get more opportunities by using LinkedIn as well. And here's 5 reasons why top social sellers are leveraging social. One is that it opens doors to other areas, so other lines of business that you may be interested in. LinkedIn opens the doors. It's a very, in the old world, the old world of branding that I talked about with Barbara Corcoran, it was very hard to get it. You had to be a very clever person like she was to get media attention. Today, LinkedIn gives you a platform to build your brand on the profile. It's the modern way of doing business. A lot of tech sellers tell me that smaller clients that they're going after, right after they meet, even with the CEO, they'll get an email wanting to connect on LinkedIn. So it's really kind of a modern way of doing business, and it really, paves the way to the C-suite and other things that you really want to do. And a lot of top social sellers really claim that it helps them not only build their prospect pool, but also shorten the sales time. So what is social selling, and how do you do it? 4 components of social selling. Number 1 is brand. You want to build your brand. Number 2 is you want to find the right people. You want to engage them. And then you want to build relationships with them. So let's break it down. Let's look at, step 1 is building your personal brand. An important thing to realize, a weak online footprint says you're a weak brand. When people look at your profile and not much is there, they're going to make the assumption that you're not as strong as someone that has a strong profile that utilizes the 2,000 characters in the summary, that tells an interesting story, that has a lot of activities going on. So it's a key thing you want to do. And also pull strategies where clients and prospects are attracted to you really require a strong brand. They're not going to go to a brand that doesn't look like it's substantial. That's true in the product world. It's also true in the world of personal branding. So how do you figure out, what your brand is, and how do you figure out how to build your brand? In the marketing world, the first step is we do a brand audit. And part of the brand audit is doing a SWOT analysis, looking at your strengths and your weaknesses, and then also looking, the neat thing about the SWOT analysis is it forces you to look at the marketplace. What are the opportunities in the marketplace? And what's changing? What are the threats? What should I be worried about? So, and when you do the SWOT and when you think of your strengths, you want to frame your strengths. So how is that demonstrated in things that I've accomplished in my career? You want to demonstrate it. Because of this trait, I accomplished X relative to others. So you really want to frame it so that people can understand it. A big thing we do on the brand audit also is look at the competition. Who are our competition? What is their sales message? What are their tactics? So you really want to have a gauge of what your competitors are doing as well. And what it's all leading up to is defining your value. What is your unique selling proposition? And what you try to do in all of this is, you're looking for your differentiator. What's different about your brand compared to others? And you want to be able to answer these questions. What qualities make you different, even better than others? Unlike others in my field, fill in the blank. The value you bring to a business situation is X. So let's just take a couple of minutes. I'd like everyone to pair off with the person next to them and answer these questions, just whatever comes to mind. You really want to be able to own your value in terms of building a brand. So let's just take a few minutes, each partner, and just, brainstorm with each other and answer these questions. Can I get some sharing? What qualities make you different? This is the word that worries people. Even better than other people? Anyone willing to share? What qualities make you different? Okay. Okay. Yeah, this is a good one. Unlike others in my field, it's very important you answer that. Okay. Okay.
Okay. What's my motivation? Let's see. Unlike others in my field, I have not only worked quite a great deal on the enterprise side. So I spent 15 years with Delta, and I spent some time with UPS as what we would call a customer now. And now actually I sell solutions to people like myself. So.
And what advantages does that give you?
It gives me good insight on the things that are pitfalls for a lot of enterprises when salespeople come calling and knocking on the door. So you can say, hey, I understand what your challenges are. I understand what you're trying to accomplish. And I also understand you looking at me in a way of just a salesperson, but I'm here to actually help and help in these manners. So,
so it's not selling so much as helping. So he understands that. And having been a client myself for many years on Wall Street, a big problem with a lot of salespeople is they're selling too much and not helping. And you're under a lot of pressure when you're on the client side. So salespeople that help is very key. Other people willing to share? Is this a confident crowd? Hello. Yes.
I think I'm a pain in the ass in the most professional way.
Okay.
We support a lot of different sales organizations, so trying to get your agenda and get your stuff done, I think that's one of the qualities that makes me different. I don't think everyone agrees with it, but I'm just being honest.
But see, the thing is, no brand is for everyone, but you want to stand for something, and a lot of people are going to like because it's refreshing. When you say something like that and everybody laughs, but they think, oh, wow, I can trust this guy. Anyone else willing to share, unlike others in your field? Okay. Okay.
Unlike others in my field, I've helped large enterprises adopt different technologies, migrating from older legacy systems to cloud-based technologies.
And how do you get them to do that? Because they must be worried, like it's too radical a shift. Will my company be able to take this? So how do you deal with those kind of?
It's more focused on the people and the business process change versus the technology. So helping make sure they understand that the people will get a benefit from it and the company will benefit from it.
Right.
And the technology is really just the underpinnings below. Right. And trying to help them see the value of that.
Okay, great. All right, so in the branding world, it's the first thing you want to do is you're looking for your brand idea. You're analyzing to find your USP, your unique selling proposition. Now, there are some strategies that a lot of brands use. So I'm going to just focus on a couple of those strategies. And in the branding world, when you have a product, you explore different ones because you don't know which is going to work. For example, when Volvo was introduced in the United States, they were exploring a number of different strategies. One was this attribute strategy around safety. They were also exploring an attribute strategy around durability. One of the other strategies they were exploring was a heritage strategy. Made in Sweden, Swedish engineering. That didn't test too well because Americans go, Swedish engineering, so. But anyway, so safety went up, but it was an argument. So let's explore a couple of common positioning strategies for brands that people can use as well. And one is the expert. Being an expert in a certain area of business and standing for that with clients can be a very, very powerful strategy. Here's Warren Buffett. What's he an expert in? Finance, in investments. And so he owns that position. You really trust him. They call him the Oracle of Omaha. And a tactic of an expert, if you're positioning yourself as an expert, is white papers, writing articles, trend reports, having a point of view on the market because you're an expert. That was Barbara Corcoran's strategy. Thought leader in your niche, industry events you're an expert at as a panelist or as a speaker. So it can be a very powerful positioning strategy for brands. Another positioning strategy is attribute positioning. And this is the most popular positioning strategy of brands. It's looking at the category, what attributes are important in that category, which attributes aren't owned that I could own. I talked before about Volvo. They did an attribute strategy around safety. They made the car more safe because they were doing that strategy. So it wasn't like, the chicken and the egg. It was, this was an idea. No one owned safety. There was an important group of people in the market that it was very powerful to. So looking at the car category, who owns ruggedness? Who would you say in terms of cars? That's another attribute. Okay, Jeep. If you look at prestige, who owns that? That's another attribute. Okay, Mercedes, So they, in the car category, you see that a lot. Looking at an attribute, looking at an adjective that's available and owning that attribute. And that can be very powerful for people, owning a particular attribute. If you're in sales, it could be a trusted advisor. You want to own an attribute that's important to your audience, so it's a different positioning than expert. And the tactics here are a little different because you really, attribute positioning, go after endorsements, recommendations, his service, if your attribute is customer service or client attention, you want to have a lot of clients recommending you and mentioning your attribute, so that people really get that. And that's part of your summary and your profile is telling that story. You want to have success stories with your client that demonstrate your attribute. You want your articles that you write to reinforce that attribute. So you do everything that ties that all together. Another common positioning strategy is leadership positioning. Every category we look for leaders, the number one seller in the category. And, it's true in any area. In sales, you can be the leader overall in sales at Google. You could be the leader in a particular product area. You could be a leader in a region. So, and as a leader, part of your tactics are, you want to win awards that you mentioned, success stories for your clients because you're a leader and you tell those kind of stories. You have metrics, your sales numbers were XYZ, you were the number one producer or increased business or whatever your metrics are going to be. The thought leadership of the expert that we talked about is really on that narrow expertise area. The thought leader of a leader is a much broader kind of positioning. So and it's very powerful because a lot of people are very attracted to doing business with the leader. Can't make any mistakes if you choose, the big leader in an area. So it can be a very, very powerful positioning strategy. So for every leader, we have the against position, which is the opposite of the leader. I also call it the maverick positioning. For every Bill Gates, there's a Steve Jobs, who's the opposite. Steve Jobs is a classic maverick positioning. Here I have Richard Branson. He's a CEO of a major company. He doesn't look like the normal CEO. That's the thing. You want to go against the grain, look very different. You do the opposite of what the leader does. The leader is doing X, you do Y. You position the leader, they're big and fat and slow, and I'm nimble and smart and innovative. So it's a very, very different kind of positioning. Often it goes with, a contrarian viewpoint. If you're doing articles, it's, unlike what all the majority of people are doing, I believe you should be doing X. So it's a very different kind of refreshing, but different kind of idea of what people should do. This kind of person is a change agent. A big part of it is being very innovative. So if the market is going this way, you want to have ideas that are very innovative in a different way. And all of these ideas, I think, can be something that you use. So I also want you to take a few minutes and explore them with a person next to you, where you see yourself. If you were to position yourself in one of these, an expert, what are you an expert in? And proof, here's why I'm an expert in that or how I could promote that. Attribute positioning, the attribute I want to own is why, and why I'm good at that, and how you would, demonstrate that, proof of that, certain things that you've worked on that demonstrate that. Well, the best advertising is word of mouth. So the best advertising is always what other people say about you. You want them to both be the same. But partly what your clients and prospects are going to say is what you're communicating with them to say too. It's amazing. A lot of advertising research, what you say about a brand is how people start seeing the brand. So it works both ways. But you really want to get, always in any category, other people talking about you in terms of how you position yourself. And then this against or maverick position. So let's take a few minutes and just explore these different positions that we talked about. You know, the expert position, the attribute position, owning an important attribute in the category, this leadership position, or the against position. Where do you see yourself? Just to do a little exploratory. Who sees a good fit for themselves with the expert position? And what are you the expert in? Can we get some sharing? Who sees themselves as an expert? What's your area of expertise? Okay. We need a mic here. Okay, great. Okay. Here you go. It's open. It's open.
Okay, so expert. I lead our industry team, and I'm also the head of the retail industry. So this is the role of the people on our team for various industries that publish white papers, articles, develop a point of view, all that kind of stuff.
Okay.
So
Okay, great.
that's what our team does.
Okay. Any other people see that as a good fit? Okay. Who else? We had somebody over here.
Luis?
Okay.
Well, yeah, I'm supposed to be an expert on retail.
Okay.
I'm still developing these skills, but I was thinking that I can definitely do a better job in LinkedIn and other social networks
Right.
to promote my image.
Right.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, we've been talking about this.
Business transformation for
Yep.
the largest, most complex customers.
Yeah.
To move them into
Yeah.
this cloud, right?
Okay, say that into the mic, because that's great.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because this is, because retail is very international now. All these, companies, retailers that were just in one country are expanding. So
Yeah,
tell
we
us,
were
okay.
talking about this. Yeah, so I definitely have some skills that they could enhance in my profile.
Okay.
First of all, of them probably is my international expertise because I'm from Europe. So
Okay.
I've been working in Europe and now in the States. So I think probably that is a bit special or unusual.
No, it's very special
Yeah.
because you have a lot of information and ideas that other people want to know about.
Uh-huh. And also, yeah, exactly. So,
Okay,
yeah,
tell
so
me that part. Good.
Yeah, so I've been working in some special opportunities, like really unusual in the cloud business,
Okay.
like moving big organizations, financial organizations to the cloud and these kind of things.
Right.
So I have that in my profile, but I probably can enhance it a little bit more.
Okay. Okay, great. Okay.
I mean, I think everybody in this room is an expert, being that we come from Google.
Right. Right.
Differently than anybody else is. We also have access to Google X and everything else. So
Well,
as
part
far
of
as-
what you're saying, though, is really this against position, the maverick position, because this is a change agent position. So part of what Google stands for in my mind, and I think a lot of people's minds, is, this change agent, this creating new worlds. I mean, they were, lists of the most innovative companies in the world. Usually Google's number one. So you've got that going to it. So that's not an expert so much as, very hard to be a change agent. Companies want change agents, but there aren't that many people that are that kind of thinker. So that's a very powerful position. Who attribute positioning? Who felt there was a strong connection there for attribute positioning for themselves? Okay. And what's your attribute?
I think I've ended up as a trusted advisor.
Okay. That's a very powerful one for salespeople. So, and tell us why you're thinking, why you own that, why you want to own that, and why you do own it. Examples.
So I'm managing salespeople now and no longer selling, and I think it comes from selling for a number of years at big and small companies, running my own company, and having an expensive education. And
Right.
I now ended up as a trusted advisor on the team and elsewhere.
Okay. Okay, that's a great story. Okay.
We have an internal way to endorse people. That is called peer bonus. It has also financial impact, but a small one. So I had this idea, when I was listening to you, to use my former people that has given me peer bonuses in the past, so I can contact them and say, hey, why don't you please endorse me in LinkedIn?
Right.
Yeah.
Very important to reach out and ask. Anyone else for attribute? A different attribute? Leadership? A leader in some area of sales that... No leaders here. Okay. Mm-hmm. Okay.
Thought leadership.
Okay, give an example. For example, I did a paper on or article on. You want to be able to tell a story about it, so bring it to life.
Right.
Okay.
So I wouldn't say I'm an author, but I do
Okay.
promote a lot of articles about,
Okay.
thought leadership, leading positions, big data,
Right.
transformational technologies,
Okay.
so
Okay. All right.
customer case studies
Okay. Okay, great.
that Ron is writing.
Okay, Mavericks. Any Maverick? People like that positioning for themselves and how it fits in? It's a strong position. And I think Google owns it in general. I think that's the viewpoint people have of Google. Okay, great.
I assume that there's a lot of people in this room who fall into this category just because, as you mentioned earlier, we're all trying to do something a little bit different here.
Right.
And I think that we all bring a very diverse background, and a lot of people here were at the top of their fields in a really diverse, set of companies or organizations. And so that they take those types of contrarian viewpoints and they really use it to leverage it. Let's stop and think, just because something is the way it's been, does that mean that's the way it has to be?
Right.
And I think that people in this room are exceptionally good at that.
Right, right. And innovation's an important driver. All right, so what we're doing with all of this exploration is trying to come up with our USP, our unique selling proposition, what makes us different, and it's our selling idea. So the next thing we want to look at is, packaging your brand. You want to think of your LinkedIn profile as an ad for brand you. Who's your target audience for your LinkedIn profile? What are those people like? What are your keywords? What's your story? You want your whole profile to work together and tell a story. Tell the story you want to tell about yourself. What's your visual identity as well? Here's an example of a client who, again, you want to think of LinkedIn profile as an ad. Good picture, good headline, strong summary of yourself and your experience. And if you don't think visual identity is important, in 2 seconds or less, people take you in, whether they meet you in person or look at your LinkedIn profile. 2 seconds or less, they take you in and they figure out what you're all about. There have been a lot of, Malcolm Gladwell wrote a book, Blink, about it. In the blink of an eye, we take something in. The interesting thing about visual identity is these quick, what social scientists call thin slicing, they're remarkably accurate. And they're very sticky. They stick with us. So that's why you want to think about first impressions and the impression that your virtual brand gives as well. They did studies at a number of universities showing students a 2-second video of a professor before they took a course with him or her. And then they gave them the same questionnaire 5 months later after they took a course. And they found that 2-second slice that they saw of the professor and what they wrote in their evaluation was almost identical with what they wrote after being in that person's class for 5 months. So these snap impressions are very powerful. They're very powerful for people. The other thing that's important about visual identity is there's a beauty premium. And, the branding world knows about that. That's why we spend a lot of time in the way something is packaged. Something that's well packaged, you can charge more for it. People in tests, they think there's more volume in it. Just because of its packaging may or not be true. And the same is true with people. There was a study done called the Beauty Premium by 2 professors, one a Harvard economist and one a Wesleyan economist. And they named it the Beauty Premium, and they did a big study and that, looking at people and people that package themselves well. And we can all package ourselves well because interesting looking is very attractive. That people that package themselves well were hired over people that were less attractive or packaged. And it had a halo effect because someone looked good. People thought they were smarter than people who didn't look as good. And they thought it had a whole halo effect and a whole range of values, including being kinder and more productive and worth more, et cetera, et cetera. So you want to think of how you package yourself, and here virtually on LinkedIn. I know you've all gotten your pictures taken at Google, but you want to think of the whole look of that, because, and the picture's important because LinkedIn's research shows that your profile is 11 times more likely to be read and looked at if you have a picture. The other thing you can do, we talk about in the branding world is having a visual hook for your brand. Twitter has its bird, every brand tries to have a visual hook so that it hooks in the brand in the minds of people. And, on LinkedIn, you can use rich media in your summary. You can use it in your experience section and in your education section. So you can have, here's an example from a colleague that I know. She has an ebook, and there's the picture of the ebook. She's got a little mini slide presentation. Now, you're not going to put your slide presentation that you would give to a client, but you could do 5 slides that are trends, because a lot of people are visually oriented. So you could do things like that give your profile a very rich, robust look rather than just text. You can have a speaking video, or if you're at a conference, or a short clip that people can see, trend reports, other things like that you can have right there on your LinkedIn profile. Put a nice cover on it. So it gives your profile, a strong visual hook as well. So in terms of branding, when we're packaging the brand, there's the visual identity, which is very powerful. Also the verbal identity, and the most, first critical verbal identity decision we make in branding is the name. What are we going to name it? Google has a great name. It has meaning to it. It's an unusual name, the double O, the 2 Gs. A lot of people copied the double O thing with Google's success. But names are important for people too. In Hollywood, for years they changed their names to make a more attractive name. I sometimes ask people, would Marilyn Monroe be the, icon she is today, the beauty icon she is today, if she had kept her original name? Does anyone remember her original name? Norma Jean. Yeah, is Norma a pretty name? What do you think? It's your daughter's name. Yeah, it's a pretty name. But I'm thinking, well, there was a study done of 2 women. There was a study done of 2 women that were viewed as equally attractive. And then there was the same picture shown to another group asking about attractiveness. The only change was made, half the pictures had Elizabeth on them, and then half had Gertrude. Guess who wasn't attractive anymore? Yeah, so names can hurt you. The other name you want to think about from a branding perspective is, how do you label yourself? What do you call yourself? That can help you or hurt you too. And we don't take our own name. We don't give ourselves our own names. But the fact of the matter is, unusual names are a real benefit on the internet because you can own your name. And you want to try to own your name.com, own your name, LinkedIn/your name. It's easy to change that. But another important name is, how do you label yourself? How do you describe what your job is? And that can help you or hurt you as well too. Here was a study done showing people clips of a video of a professor, same clip. Half of them labeled him as humanistic psychology professor. And then the other group saw the same video clip with the label statistics professor. What do you think they said about the professor when the label was humanistic psychology? More interesting, thoughtful, he'd be fair in grading, blah, blah, blah. What do you think they said when he was a statistics professor, the very same clip? Boring. And he'd be a tough grader, I don't like him. Very same thing. So you want to think of, how do you label yourself? Some companies, it's hard to tell what somebody does when you read the job title. And So you want to translate that in your LinkedIn profile so people, the target audience, the prospects you're trying to reach, can understand, what it is you do. The other thing we think about in the branding world is we talked about a visual hook is having a verbal hook, owning a word. We talked, Volvo we know who owns search, So we think of owning a word or phrase, a name, a story. What's her phrase? Lean in. I mean, she could have named her book, The Women's Guide to Success. But that wouldn't have been as smart from a branding perspective because she gave it a name that could be a mantra, that could be a calling, a rallying cry. Just like Google has become, a name for search. Let's Google somebody. So, owning a word is very powerful. And that's, writing that book with that name made her a mega business celebrity. She may have been well known at Google when she worked here, and she may have been well known in certain communities, but now she's a global star. So it's very powerful. Brands try to think, and you want to think of what your word is and what your phrases are and use them in your profile and in your conversation because it can be a very powerful positioning idea. All right, so let's explore a couple of ways of approaching. I know you've been working on your profiles. I'm going to talk about 3 ways of approaching the headline, for your LinkedIn profile. One way to go is a keyword headline. Think of keywords that people would use to find somebody like yourself that you want to own in the minds of others. And, so global executives, supply chain operations, Six Sigma black belt, gives a little, more tangible experience, ROI outperformance, strategic leader. So these are all keywords that somebody might look for in finding this person or finding somebody like them so they would come up in search on LinkedIn. Another way of going is a power statement headline, helping companies translate business goals and ideas into operational reality and positive ROI. So this is like the same person that I was doing the keyword headline for, I wrote a power statement headline for. And another way to go is a hybrid. So to have maybe begin with a power statement and then have your keywords so that people can find you. So I have a little handout here that I'm going to pass around, and it has an exploration of these 3 headline approaches. So we're going to take one and pass them along. And also a section to write down the keywords that you own or want to own. So take one and pass them down. I'll pass them over here. So look at what your current, got some extra ones here. So look at what your keywords are, and try to, when you're thinking of keywords, try to be expansive. So have as many keywords that might be useful for your brand. So this is just page 1 we're going to look at. And so the first thing you want to think about is, this section number 2 is the keyword headline, the power statement, the hybrid headline. And the headline on a LinkedIn profile is very similar to a tweet. It's 140 characters roughly, so it's like a long sentence. So explore what would work best for you. How can you improve your LinkedIn headline so that it's a stronger statement about who you are? And some people add some elements to it that are interesting, like humanitarian at the end or something like that, that dimensionalizes them in a different way. So you want to look for ways to stand out and be different. So let's focus just on page 1 here, defining who your target audience is. And I want you to look at it a little bit as a psychographic of your audience. So not just, certain kinds of people you're pitching. You can define them in job function, but also what's their mindset? What's on their mind? And then put together your headline that would most appeal to that target audience. And let's begin exploration of your keywords, the different keywords you'd want to own. Any sharing of headlines? Somebody? Okay, great.
I mean, is this a buzzword? One thing I worry about is buzzword.
That headline, I think, is terrible, personally.
Okay. Okay.
But I wrote transformation consultant to the Fortune 500. Is transformation a hackneyed term?
What do people think?
I think
What do you mean
word
consultant is a
consultant is a stretch for you.
Transformative dictator. All right.
We were calling him Hollywood. He's
Right.
Well, you were giving him crap about being a wise ass. Holy mackerel. Is that a hackneyed term?
I don't think it is. And I think one of the things that research shows is that there's a move to new buzzwords, and that it's important to use some of them because people are going to be using them. But I don't think you don't want in your headline hackneyed stuff, obviously. But I think it's good. What do other people think? You got to think of your target audience, because I think it makes me think, if I were to read that, wow, what are the transformations? Do I know about them all? I'd like to learn more about that. This guy, nobody else is saying that. So to me, it's different and relevant.
I would think about how you're transforming. So by being innovative, disruptive, creative, I mean, what are the things that you're doing differently in those transformations? Because to your point, we sell this every day, so it's probably feeling that fatigue of that word, transformation.
Right, but where do you put that other information? I would think that doesn't go in the headline. I would put it into the profile.
The most important message should be in the headline, because people aren't going to go on. But then after that, it's the summary, particularly the first two paragraphs, because they're all above the fold. They're all on that initial screen people are going to see, and then they'll scroll down if they like.
Right, so how long should the headline be?
It can only be on LinkedIn like 140 characters. It's like a tweet.
Twitter?
Yep. I have statistics that show that the way they do it is headline, visual, and then if they like that, they read the summary. Excuse me. And then if they like that, then they go on to look at other things. So that's kind of the flow. Okay. All right. So then you get to the summary part of your profile, which is your brand story told in a narrative format. That you want to give examples, not just talk about functional responsibilities, but think from a client perspective of interesting things you've done and the benefit to them. Give examples. Here's a profile, again, dealing with different experience. One of the things to think about, too, is to creatively use the publications and projects section, because that's a section where you can have links. So you can have links to a landing page or links to a website where people can read articles and things like that. So it's a way to create interaction. And the whole thing about social media is this whole idea of, creating, and we'll get more into that later, is creating interaction. So people are interacting with you. So here's a LinkedIn profile checklist. You want ideally to have a customized URL with your name on it, a good picture, strong headline that conveys your USP, that connects with your target audience, a summary, your career story with a client benefit. And that takes some time to put together. And that's something you might want to mold as new things happen in your industry and environment to change it. Question? Uh-huh. All the statistics I've seen on LinkedIn shy away from doing anything other than a headshot. But you want a headshot that communicates well with people, that you look friendly, you look interesting, you look, like somebody they want smart, somebody they want to work with. But there's a lot of negative statistics about group shots or vacation shots or things like that. And it's a small picture. The picture area isn't that big on LinkedIn.
If you're going to be different, right now, every single person here has the same stinking picture of a blue background. And it just kind of looks a little...
Okay.
So I guess, I don't know, when I see someone in a context of presenting, or if I see someone with a picture of their spouse or someone, I don't know, it just makes me think they're different. It humanizes them a little bit. So I don't know the statistics.
That's one of the things about using all these other things, if you have a video or things like that, because it humanizes the brand. So if you have a little speaking video or things like that, it humanizes the brand. I think having everybody in the company look the same isn't smart, and also doesn't really connect with Google, because Google is different, right? But the group thing, people want to see your face, so, you know, but a different kind of look. All right, so we're going to take a 5-minute break, and then this is the end of part 1, so we're going to get into how do you find people on LinkedIn, how do you engage them, how do you build relationships. So we'll get into the nitty-gritty of social selling next. A passive strategy. You're going to put your brand online, and people will look at it, will read it, but we also want to talk about, you know, you don't want to stop there. How can I use LinkedIn for social selling and branding? So what kind of actions can you take? And so step 2 we're going to talk about is finding the right people. How to use LinkedIn to find the right people. Well, we've all heard of 6 degrees of separation. Well, on LinkedIn and Facebook, it's 4.74 degrees. They did a major study globally on Facebook, got a lot of attention with it, even reaching people in remote Siberia. You know, they got there in less than 5 hops. So, you know, it's really a way to connect easier with more people using the internet and using LinkedIn and social media. And the way I see it in terms of a network, there are 4 key networks that you want to think of developing. Your strategic network, you know, includes mentors, sponsors, you know, people that you know that connect you with a lot of other people, you know, what Malcolm Gladwell calls connectors. And that group also is allies. Reid Hoffman, you know, the CEO of LinkedIn, in his book, The Startup of You, talks about his network. And he's got this band of brothers, allies, guys at different companies, non-competitive, that are friends with him, and they all, you know, text each other with ideas and text each other, try this or try that. So they've got, you know, a group of peers getting information that you can't really get from a mentor or sponsor, who are generally more senior people. He's got this, you know, band of allies. And in this strategic network, these are people that have strong career impact and also have strong relationship strength. So they're all people on LinkedIn that would be first-degree connections. But another very important network is this core network. Again, it has very strong career impact. These are people that are your colleagues at your company, at Google, but also people in the industry, your clients and prospects. And some of them will be first-degree contacts. Some of them will be people that are second-degree contacts that you don't know that well. And one of the goals that you want to do on LinkedIn is move more people from second-degree to first-degree contacts, because when they're a first-degree contact, you can have unlimited messaging with them, et cetera, and you have access to who their network is. So that's sort of part of the strategy, is moving more people into first-degree contacts. Now, another group that's an important network is what I'm calling soft links. These are people that you don't know well, but they can be valuable just the same, because they're often useful when you have a particular target in mind or things like that. So they're people that you don't know well. And then the bottom right, I'm calling it a grassroots network. These are people that are close family and friends. Again, not high career impact, but very, you know, strong support system just the same. Sure.
What about the idea of knowing or being able to speak for anyone you're connected to, or sort of being willing to endorse? So do you want to connect people whom you don't know well enough to know if they're sort of high quality?
Right. You know, people have different philosophies of that, and I'm curious what you people find works. I think that it's kind of divided down the middle. We're going to look at some of the habits of super sellers, but there are people that are very open networkers and accept anyone, and you can endorse anyone. And you put your skills and expertise on LinkedIn, and people can endorse you in those categories. But also on LinkedIn, other people can see your profile and put new skills and endorse you in them. And, you know, a lot of people that endorse me, I don't know who they are. So, you know, maybe I don't know. So it's kind of a philosophy, and I think the jury is still out what the way to go is. But I think a lot of, and as I say, super sellers, they're kind of divided down the middle from people who only build a network that's really, what I'd call genuine, i.e. people that they know, whereas other people are more open about it, figuring that maybe I'll find a connection, I'll find a way to connect, and it'll be useful to me. Yes. Okay.
Not to be like a fabric.
Okay. Okay.
But I just have a larger question. To your same point about people who are endorsing you that you don't know, who can't speak to your skill set, why, like, I struggle, I'm from the East Coast too, so it's a bit different, but I struggle with taking LinkedIn as like a credible source, because you can sort of like make up what you are.
Right.
So like, what's your response?
What is your, you take what is the, I didn't understand the question. I didn't.
Well, like, just the whole idea of like people that you don't know endorsing you.
Right.
So like, why should we take it seriously? And like, we can make up like what it says we do.
I think a lot of people, LinkedIn introduced endorsements last year because the fact of the matter is not a lot of people write recommendations, and a recommendation is something you have control over. Recommendation doesn't get posted unless you like it and agree to it and say yes, and then it gets posted. And you generally ask people to recommend you, or you recommend them and they offer to recommend you. The endorsements they did because all you have to do is click on the plus button next to a skill, so it's very easy for people to do, but you don't have control over it. So yes, do I think people in the know don't take endorsements that seriously? Because they know that. But other people might look at somebody and they see, 50 endorsers in each of these key categories and think, oh, well, this person's somebody. But yes, people in the know that endorsements aren't that real. So that's what matters a lot more, is getting recommendations. Okay. Right.
I endorse all of my executive customers as a nicety, and it goes a mile. It's amazing.
I don't think there's no quality, I agree, there's no quality control, but I also think not only is it a nice thing to do to clients or prospects, but I also think that when you look at somebody's profile and they have a lot of endorsements, whether you know that anybody can do it, you think, well, there's somebody versus somebody that has almost nothing. You have to realize people think, people make these snap judgments. So, but yes, I think people in the know that endorsements, you have no control over it, and a lot of them are from people, who knows why they're doing it, but they're doing it.
They may see value in evaluating you based on what's out there. So even if you don't see it, you have to realize that you may be...
Can I tell you, I think this is a key point. I agree with him. I think this is a key point. A lot of people aren't going to realize that any Tom, Dick, and Harry can do that. But look, oh, this person's been endorsed a lot. They're going to think you're better than somebody that hasn't been endorsed a lot. So I don't, absolutely, it's absolutely.
So, yeah.
No, exactly.
So a good example is I was endorsed by my optometrist. It kind of caught me by surprise. He's a good friend of mine, and he endorsed me for. Yeah. Well, no, he actually is on. He is.
He wants you to come in.
He is on Google Apps.
Right.
He is on Google Apps, but as far as like him endorsing me for a specific data center or cloud skill I'm not really sure what that value might be.
Can I tell you, I have.
I need glasses to be a visual.
Can I tell you, I have a number of people like that too that I know who they are, and I'm wondering why are they even bothering, because they don't know me, excuse me, professionally. But some people, they like to do it, and that's it. So, but I think ultimately it's a positive, because there are enough people that are going to look at it and think this person is better than somebody that doesn't have many. So, but what really counts is recommendations. So somebody taking the time to write a few sentences about you, that really counts, particularly if, you know, it's a high-level endorsement too, that they have a good title at the client side. That works wonders because other potential clients and prospects are going to say, oh, this person spent the time to write a recommendation. That's what's really going to count. All right, so what the power of LinkedIn is, the power of the second degree. It's this whole area. It's not who you know, but who do they know. So that's the big thing that LinkedIn gives you, is this ability to look at the network of your first degree contacts and who do they know. And again, kind of forming, you know, what I said, Reid Hoffman's big thing is this band of brothers, you know, that people that help each other. Oh, I know so-and-so there, I can introduce you to that person, and vice versa. So a big thing is, you know, the old way of doing business, you know, who do I know at company X? The new way is, who does my network know? And how can I leverage that network? You know, and one of the whole things about LinkedIn, and I think a smart way to network, is this whole idea of you want a broad network, because a lot of business can come from people that you don't know that well, or maybe aren't that prominent. So you want it broad, but you want it selectively deep. You can't be deep with everybody, but you want to be deep with the kind of clients and prospects that you're going after. Because more people that fit that bill will know other people like themselves. So that's why that strategy is important. And also this statistic I have here, that new research study showing that there are 5.4 decision makers involved in each B2B decision process. So you want to influence the other people that are part of that decision process as well. You know, and so LinkedIn, you know, can be a very good vehicle for helping you do that. So how do top social sellers, you know, use LinkedIn? You know, about half of them sign up for the, you know, premium product. How many people here have premium? I guess you all do, right? Okay. Okay, so it's divided down the middle here. You know, there's a mixed. What are people's opinion that have the premium? What do you think of it? Sales Navigator, who's using it? Okay, can you want to pass the thing over? The advantages that you see from it? Okay.
I have premium, and I don't know if Julia does, but the director of media and high tech as well, because we've been doing some enterprise-wide industry thought leadership kind of things on LinkedIn, and there's so many things that you can do that I wasn't even aware that you could do with creating contact lists directly from other companies, you know, just continuing to drilling down. It's almost like a pivot table that you drill down until you get to the person that you want to get to, and it's just too hard to find in this. And then plus you get limited on the number of mails that you can send. You know, inviting contacts, there's just too many limitations when you're trying to do something across, at least for me, trying to do something across the enterprise.
You know, so it gives you access to third degree, okay, another comment?
We need an enterprise license though, because it's pricey.
Yeah, well that's how, this, you know, LinkedIn made a killing on the recruitment market, and their whole focus now is sales. And then, you know, it's pricey, and get all your sellers on that monthly thing, you know.
One thing I was hoping we would get from you is, you know, the settings in LinkedIn are very complex. Like when you said endorsements, the reason I think people endorse you, and John mentioned it to me, is so that their feed shows that they endorsed you. Basically, it helps their own feed. You know, and then all the settings that you have around privacy and what degree of people can see. I was hoping maybe you would share some of those.
I'm going to get into that. Yeah, I'm going to get into that.
Yeah, one more thing. So a lot of it's been focused on discovery and access. Not to be arrogant, but the brand takes us quite a ways. If you'd imagine. And one of the things I'm looking to also understand is if we have contact, an established relationship, how can we better utilize some of these tool sets to influence that decision beyond just meeting new people, but to influence and sell through?
Okay. I'm going to be getting into some of that, so we can go into that and then talk about it more when we get there. But anyway, so top social sellers, you know, about 50% of them use LinkedIn. You get a lot of advantages. You get premier search filters. You know, you get access to third-degree contacts, lead builder system. There's also this team link that you can find out, you know, who other people at your company know. And that's something that you have to opt in for. So in the privacy, you have to sign up for it. And if you don't sign up for it, you can't see, likewise, who other people at your company know. So they kind of penalize you for that. Yeah, but you get all of who viewed your profile, because if you don't have the premium product, you just see like 5, and the rest they don't show you. It's a blank face. So if you did that, you see all who's viewed your profile, which could be interesting because it could be prospects looking at your profile or competitors or et cetera, et cetera. So you'll see all the names of who's looked at your profile. Yes.
So the idea of creating specific industry groups on LinkedIn.
I'm going to get that. I'm going to get to that. I'm going to get to that. But there are a lot of ways. How many people here belong to, how many groups do people belong to here? A lot, ton? You can do 50, so how many belong to over 50? Okay, a lot of you belong to 50. And how many people here have set up their own group? Okay, on LinkedIn, okay. We're going to get into that. I'm going to get into that because it's a strategy that certain sellers do, and what they often do is look at groups that have their prospects and have their clients in, join that group. When you join a group, you can see the list of other members, and you can message them directly. But what sellers do, if they have a niche market, is they build a site, start their own group that's related to the other group with a different twist. And then they reach out to the people in the group to join their group. And there you've got your own little forum for communicating with people on an ongoing basis. But it has to have like a little different twist to it. And it also, you might want to have a little small group of people that are maintaining it because, it takes some time, to put in articles yourself and get conversation going and invite people to join. But certain sellers have used it, and it's a very powerful strategy because you've got people in a group and you're positioning yourself as the thought leader of that group, right, by being part of it, by starting the group and keeping a discussion going. And people have found it as a very good tool for building business, converting, building stronger relationships. So it's looking at what kind of group would your prospects or clients be interested in that's not out there? And who are those people, joining those groups and inviting them to join yours? Yes.
So one of the things that on the team we've been talking about is how do we move from an outreach where we do a one-touch or kind of a campaign type to more of a continuous conversation with prospects, right?
Right.
And it'd be interesting to hear how we can actually use LinkedIn to continue that, because I think even after a sale and once we're in an account, that continuous conversation piece is really important now. It's a differentiator. Typically the past has been campaign, outreach, then step away.
Right. Yeah, I'm going to get into that, and that's a key thing to think about because having been on the client side, one of the problems is a lot of people sell you something and then they disappear. So there's a kind of the romance period and then they're gone. And clients kind of resent that. So it's very important to have a vehicle for doing that. And I'm going to go over some ideas on doing that. You can do that with a group too. Having a group that carries on the conversation. But there's a number of ways to do that. So I'm going to get into that. Okay.
When I see a certain number of, whatever you want to call it, activity coming through on my feed from a particular person.
Right.
So I know of one individual in particular that posts nothing but endorsements, nothing but recommendations, nothing but articles over and over and over again, every single day, to the point where I don't even think they do anything other than look at LinkedIn all the time.
Right.
So they lose, is there a tipping point where you lose credibility because all you're doing is using LinkedIn?
Yeah.
And where is the philosophical balance of using this for a real tool versus using it as a Facebook alternative and then it carries no value and you devalue everything you do because you're in it so much?
Right. I think people who do that, I think we all have somebody like that. And I think that, you got to think of branding, and a brand. And, you want to build an image for yourself. You want to build a conversation. You want to build engagement, but you don't want to be annoying. And if you're annoying, nobody wants to do business with you. It's just like, any brand, So I think, there's a fine balance there. Is there a number? I think you have to sense that. But there are certain people that I get updates from every day and that, endorse 1 million people and all this stuff goes through. You can block those people, by the way. But it's annoying. And so you have to think about, yes, LinkedIn can work against you. But I think also there's a danger not using LinkedIn because your clients are using it, your prospects are using it, and your competitors are using it. So you want to use it to build a positive, image for yourself and build positive relationships and nurture them, but you don't want to be a pest. And I think some people, I wonder, where's the day job? Because it's so annoying. So it's a fine balance, and you have to figure that out. What's a good amount of communication? And a lot of it is based on this whole idea of who is your target audience and what kind of relationship, what kind of communication would be effective with them. And if you're bombarding people, then you devalue the whole thing and you're a nuisance and they don't want to do business with you. All right, so what do top sellers value in terms of LinkedIn? Researching people and companies, is by far the dominant one. This whole idea of leveraging second-degree contacts and who they know. There's more detailed ways to, connect on LinkedIn. You can leverage your company's contacts. There's stories, articles written about this that, they found out through LinkedIn that an admin person's, uncle was a CIO at a company and they wouldn't have found that connection otherwise. So there's a lot of things that can help you with maintaining relationships, and we'll get into more detail in a little bit. Electronic word of mouth, it's a word of mouth is the most important kind of advertising, getting other people to advocate for you, and LinkedIn gives you vehicles for doing that. The most used features are, who has viewed my profile? 71% of the top sellers, that's their most used feature. People you may know, groups, direct messaging is also cited. Top sellers in terms of LinkedIn groups tend to belong to 30 groups, whereas 36% overall just belong to 1 or 9. A lot of them, join alumni groups too, which I found to be very helpful. There's something about people that went to the same school that, will help you in ways that I haven't seen with other kinds of things. So that can be an important one too. Target industries, obviously, functions. They work the members page. They start looking at who the members are and how they can work that to build relationships with them. Join groups strategically. They look at who their hot prospects are, what groups are they in, join those groups, and trying to be, part of the conversation and build a relationship that way. And if that person posts questions, responding to them, and getting a sense of what they're interested in through that means as well. You can follow conversations of interest on groups. You can set up a follow for that. So here I'm isolating 6 secrets of, search secrets of super sellers according to research that's out there. 1, they use the advanced search feature to establish winning search parameters. They save that search and, create alerts so that when anything changes within that group that they've targeted, they get an automatic update about it. So it's an easy way to see who's new to that meets those parameters, that weren't on the list before, etc. Browse the network of your network. You can do this with first-degree contacts only. And they have a feature that you can do this automatic introduce with LinkedIn. But I think what a lot of people don't realize is when you use that, the recipient sees the email that you wrote to your first-degree contact, as well as the thing that you're writing, the message that you're writing to them. So I think it's smarter to really pick up the phone, and if somebody's a first-degree contact, or sending them an email directly and say, I see you're a first-degree contact with so-and-so, and make it a positive thing, like not, I want to sell to them, but, we've sold similar product to another company that, really I think they'd be interested in learning more about, and do you feel comfortable, do you have introducing me personally? It's much better if there's a personal introduction through email rather than using, I think, the LinkedIn device. Number 3 is you want to check out viewers of this profile also viewed and people similar to. Now, this is something that top super sellers do, and it can give you ideas of other people that could be good leads for you. Likewise, check out, who's viewed your profile. Super sellers also do active company searches, advanced search by name or by parameters. And when you do a company search like that, it'll list the people that you're first degree, connected with, the, the top 5. You can follow a company. And you can view people who viewed this company also viewed. So it's an easy way to keep track of all of that. Supercellers also use groups strategically. They join groups that prospects have joined, or that they join groups of people that have access to top prospects. So if you have a CIO target or a C-level target, you can join groups that suppliers belong to, or media people or customers of theirs, to build relationships and then move to the next level. You can check the group's about section, and they'll tell you what kind of members are in the group, how active the group is, the seniority of them, the location. And then, as I said, there's a group of supercellers, and we'll get into more detail later, form their own group, to sort of develop their thought leadership and also develop relationships. And a key thing that supercellers do too is they're easy to reach, they're easy to find. They have keywords, a lot of keywords in their profile, so they're easy to find. Their title is something that people can understand, or they change their title so people understand who they are and what their function is. You can easily put contact information in your profile if you want. You can put your direct email address if you want, so that you're easy to reach. So step 1 is you want to build your brand. Step 2 is you want to find the right customers for yourself. And step 3 is about engagement. So how do you engage these people and get a dialogue going and build a relationship? And the first thing you want to think about is, who is your target audience? So that point I was making earlier, who is your audience? What action do I want them to take? And what do I have to do to get that reaction? And having been a corporate person in the marketing area, the CIO target, in my opinion, is very different from a CMO target if you're branching out into these other areas. And according to Gartner, 80% of marketing tech spending will be in LBOs in 2 years' time. So it's an audience to think about. A lot of tech companies are going after the other areas of the C-suite. And the CIO, in my experience working on Wall Street, they were more risk adverse than marketing people, and they didn't want to see a lot of change and upset the system, and much more traditional kind of person, so a different kind of sell than a CMO who was always charged with, what are you doing next? What kind of exciting new things? Or, the CEO was always calling my area, oh, I talked to this other CEO at this company, and this is what he's doing. Have you thought of trying that? So it's always what's new and what's innovative to bring in new customers for the company. So the marketing, and now so much of the marketing is technology-based because of the whole importance of the internet and digital media and the whole importance of social media, that, and if I'm going to be judged on it, I want to control the budget. So that's why so much is moving to marketing and LBOs. Right now, a lot of it's smaller business, but I think it's going to be growing. And a key thing you want to think about in this whole area of how do you engage your target audience is, you always want to be connecting with them, not annoying them, but connecting with them in a meaningful way. But a big thing in branding today is emotional branding, understanding what your clients and prospects are thinking about, what their problems are, what their mindset is, and connecting with that in an emotional way. Much more powerful than rational arguments are connecting with people emotionally. If people connect with you, just think when you meet somebody that you have a mutual friend in common, there's quick rapport that's attached, that's established because you both have this bond with somebody you both know. So you always, I'm doing this whole always series. So you always want to be connecting. You always want to be tracking competitors. This is a new thing that LinkedIn introduced about 2 weeks ago. And it's a new tool tracking companies on LinkedIn and how important different companies are. And here it shows, you've got some 500-pound gorillas here on LinkedIn. Microsoft, IBM, Oracle, HP, Google, this was done by looking at the target audience of these companies, and this is a high-tech one, and they've done it for every industry. So you can see the companies that are spending a lot on content on LinkedIn, that have a lot of employees that are engaged on LinkedIn. And they came up with these they just posted this a couple days ago. So, you know, what they're trying to do, obviously, is to get the companies that aren't as strong on LinkedIn to get a stronger, you know, position, get more of their people involved with LinkedIn, to also get more involved with corporate ads, et cetera, et cetera. So it measures all of that, all of the people at a company. Yes? No, that was my point.
We heard a rumor a little while ago that if you link with somebody, for example, if I link with somebody from Microsoft,
right,
can they then see everybody I'm linking with from that point on? What do they see?
Yes. Yeah, your first-degree connection. Yes. Yes.
So I heard that they were actively doing that to see who we're connecting with.
Yeah.
So
okay,
what should we do about that?
Then
Not
you
link
can't
with-
connect.
Don't connect
yeah,
with anyone from Microsoft?
But they will see that, yes. They will see that. And as you can see, LinkedIn has been a big strategy of Microsoft, you know, and IBM and these other companies. And so, yeah. Yes. Yes. Yeah, so you've got to think about who the first-degree connections are going to be. You've got to think about who your first-degree connections are going to be, because they would have access to your network. Right. And, you know, this is important because from an advertising standpoint, visibility for a brand is very important. Google has a fabulous reputation, but this shows you that you're being out communicated on LinkedIn vis-a-vis some of your major competitors. And it's important because in the branding world, we measure, you know, visibility. We measure spending. We measure attitude and awareness of different brands. And generally, the brands that spend the most are the most well-known. And there's a real premium to being well-known, because if you're well-known as a brand, people think you're better than a brand that's not as well-known. Now, these are all equally well-known companies, you know, but people are they're getting more messages, you know, from some of your competitors. And so that's, you know, why all of you being involved in a bigger way is going to help that score as well. And the other thing, you can follow companies. And I think you should follow your company, obviously, but your competitors. You can see here there's more people following Google than are following Microsoft, in spite of all their spending and activity on LinkedIn. And this is part of the new report that LinkedIn is giving out. What? Oh, right. She and I connected. Yeah. Right. Oh, really? Uh-huh. Right. No, she was telling me about that. Yeah, right. But yeah. And by the way, for Patricia, not only did she and I connect, but then she introduced me to somebody, a friend of hers at another company. So she made that little gift to me. So I think that was very smart. But yeah, it shows new people, who you're connected to, new people that you're connected to, et cetera, et cetera.
I think a lot of people following Google that are looking for jobs, so that's
Right.
probably why our numbers are much higher.
Mm-hmm. I think it's consumer. I think you're right. Yeah, I think it's consumer. And I think that it has such a powerful brand with everybody, but really for young people, it's, you know, the place to work, you know, and innovative, et cetera, et cetera. And I have to say, your image lives up to your billing, walking through this building myself, you know. So it's true. So you always want to be on trend. And a new thing that LinkedIn is doing is this trending content tool. So it tells you can do each industry and what are the hot topics in the auto industry. What on LinkedIn? What are the hot topics in the retail industry? What are the hot topics of CMOs, et cetera, the most read and passed along and stuff like that. So that can be, you know, because the big thing, you know, questions are, how do you keep an ongoing relationship? Well, you want to be posting articles and on things that are on trend. You know, you want to be on trend, the latest ideas. So you want to have a pulse of what people are interested in. And LinkedIn now has a tool, as I said, it's just introduced. Okay, question here?
So one thing we've talked about is being on trend, but what value do you see for not following the trend? Because, you know, I always see on my LinkedIn, like 10 people post the same article. And to me, that's a lot less interesting than the one person who posts something that's a little different.
Well,
so
I
how
agree
do
with you. Here's the thing. In branding, the first person to post on a topic kind of gets the benefit because they're the leader. You know, the first out of the box. There's a tremendous premium for being the first. That's another positioning strategy that I didn't get into. But being the first can be, but all the follow-ons. But what you want to do is be on trend with a difference, with a different perspective. So, I mean, and so you don't want to be rehashing old news, but say it with a different twist on it, a different interpretation. A big thing that clients are interested in the B2B market is your thought process, how you think about something. And Google already has this image of super innovative, the latest thinking. So you want to talk about that. You know, the trend is blah, blah, but this isn't really the way things are going to go because of this. And take people through the thought process. That really captivates clients and prospects, in my view. But I think, yeah, you know, you can't be, you know, I'm saying be on trend, you know, but you have to have a different twist to it. You have to have the Google perspective that's going to be smarter and a little different than the hoi polloi. You know, so that's what you want to do. Always be relevant. And another thing, you can slice and dice this content report that LinkedIn is cranking out is, you know, by the C-suite. What are the most read and passed along articles that they're doing? And so this is kind of a quick read to see, and it's very different than the auto industry, and et cetera, et cetera. So it can be very helpful giving you an idea of a dialogue to have and a conversation to have.
How do we know about these new things in LinkedIn?
Well, I just found about it on the LinkedIn, you know, publicity, but it's being given to your marketing department. So your marketing department has it.
They're failing us.
And I don't know your marketing area, but because I was researching that, like, because I found this because it's new and they're publicizing it. And they're obviously, as I said, they're really going after the sales marketplace. So they're developing a lot of tools, because I know people in recruitment before, and they just love the LinkedIn tools, and they made tons of money off that, and they're doing it. But they're providing some very useful tools, but they're providing, they publicized a lot of this on the internet, but they're giving the detailed, so they're not giving the exact scores except to the specific companies, but they're giving these reports. But you've got to figure out, marketing has got to be providing you with this kind of information, because it's very valuable, because they're slicing and dicing it by C-suite, by industry, by other functions. So it can be very, very useful. Here, because they're giving it to the marketing people right now. They just launched it 2 or 3 weeks ago. They publicized it. That's where I got these charts from. And this is, they just launched it in March, the open launch, but they're giving it to the marketing department. So you have to get it from them. Always be up to date. And here's another feature. I mean, you can customize what the feed is that you get on your updates, so that you only get certain kinds of things. You can indicate the kind of information that you want to receive when clients are changing their profile or linking up with a sales rep at a competitor. You can customize, because you don't want necessarily everything there, else you just got like too much information. You know, it's not that useful. But you can make it so you're up to date on who the people, the clients, and the prospects that you're following, any news to them that might be useful for you. You always want to be helping. Really, social selling is more about helping than selling. And so a key thing people are looking for on LinkedIn is really useful stuff, you know. And there's research, if you look at what works in direct mail, excuse me, what works in direct mail or works online in terms of what's passed along. The number one thing is people, excuse me, let me get some water here, is useful information. You know, here's what other people are doing. important new trends infecting your industry. So it's useful information is what people are looking for, particularly if it's new and different than they haven't seen a million other places. Another thing that, and I'm sure you've gotten emails like this, and it works in the direct mail area and the direct marketing, selling products, as well as with people, is a teaser. Forgot to tell you something, or I have some surprising news or something like that. People tend to open emails like that because they're curious what's inside here. So it gets opened. Personal, a personal twist, thinking of you. Here's a solution to your problem. People tend to open those kind of emails. You want to think of that. So it's really not selling so much as, useful information. Always be inviting. I invited Chris. He accepted. But after you hook up with somebody, you get a notice. View Chris's profile. You can click and view his network, et cetera, et cetera. So always be inviting people that you want to know. And I bet there's a lot of people that you know well, colleagues from past companies. And LinkedIn has a lot of devices. And I have a link at the end of a detailed ebook that, because some of it's complicated, that details how to do every little function you might want to do on LinkedIn. So you always want to be inviting the right people and inviting people that could be your allies, and they not necessarily people that work in your industry, but they could be other people that could be part of your band, that you help each other with ideas, etc. And so what works in a LinkedIn invite? They have a default one. I'd like you to join my LinkedIn network. But what a lot of people say is they want it more personal and more likely to accept if you make it personal. Great meeting you at the conference the other day. Love to link. I think we have a lot of similar interests. Blah, blah, blah. So just short couple of sentences. As I say, I believe in endorsing. You want to endorse people, and it's an easy way to do clients and prospects. And as I say, I think even though we know that anybody can do it and what the value of some of it is, it looks good on your profile that you're a person that people think well of. You always want to be recommending, and the best way to get a recommendation is to write somebody a recommendation. And you can ask people if they could recommend you, leave them an out, if they have time, something like that. Remind them of a shared experience. I think it helps with a lot of people because a lot of people find writing onerous, is to say, remember we worked on this project, and kind of give them the copy so it's kind of a draft. And so it's easy for them to do. But the recommendations count a lot for people, and you're going after a lot of clients and prospects. Yeah, I think this is great. Yeah. I think this is great. I think that you should go after everyone who's written an evaluation of you and ask them, and kind of give them draft copy, because a lot of people are inundated with work. So kind of give them draft copy. People that you worked on a project together with. Remind them what the project was and how the team worked and the results, and sort of draft something. People you work together with at other companies. You want to have a robust list of people that are recommending you, because it's going to help you sell in, because people think, wow, these people took the time to write a recommendation. That's really worth something. You always want to be liking and commenting, particularly if clients or prospects are posting something on the internet, and it's just like Facebook, it's very easy to do. But again, it's touching someone. Also, I'm going to talk later about touch points, but in the branding world, we think about touch points. Every place a brand and a person touch. And the whole game is to increase the touch points, to also have them all consistent. You don't want to have, a bad voicemail message that you sound harried, and then, a very professional website. You got to have it all work together. But all that's valuable. Always be connecting via groups. one of the things that's good about a lot of these groups is you can find the pain points. There's always people asking questions. Does anyone have ideas on how you solve this problem? So answer questions, ask questions, answer questions. That can be a very good vehicle for that kind of thing too. And as I said earlier, you know, be easy to reach. But groups can be a very interesting way to get to know people that could be potential clients and prospects or allies of yours to help each other. Always be repurposing. I had this conversation with somebody earlier. I believe in everything that I write a blog post on, I do several different tweets on it with, you know, different facets of it. I may, you know, somebody was saying if I've posted an article, should I also blog about it? Yes, but write it a little differently, a little different headline, change a couple of sentences around. Not everybody saw the article, you know, so you want to use all these different channels. If you have a slide deck that's resonating with clients, think, is there a way to make 5 slides out of it that would be okay in a public deck? Because your competitors could see it as well, but you're looking at your prospects, and a lot of people are very visually oriented, and there's a lot of research that shows that when you tell a story with visuals, people remember it much more than if they're just reading an article. So that's why a slide thing with pictures and a couple of sentences can be very, very effective. You know, and I threw, you know, top 5 trends transforming retail, you know, or an infographic. If you have a complicated report, that you could do an infographic on it, or things like that. You want to think creatively, but everything I'd repurpose into at least 4 different ways or more. And you always want to be linking and tracking. IBM got a lot of attention with this social media campaign that they developed for their web-based services, which they weren't selling that well. That wasn't going that well for them, so they decided to do a social media approach on LinkedIn. And I don't know what their base was, but you know, they claim in the articles about it that they increased sales 400% with social selling link, and they linked it to a landing page, so they were able to track easily what resources people were clicking on and what was working, and then they, you know, made sure things were followed up. And you know, there's another study that, you know, by HubSpot looking at their clients, and that LinkedIn generated the highest visitor lead conversion rate, you know, 2.74%, which is a pretty good conversion rate compared to Twitter and Facebook, which were all under 1%. So this idea of using LinkedIn and linking it to a landing page where you can track leads and then follow up on them can be very, very valuable. So step 4, so we talked about, you know, step 1 is brand. Step 2 is finding the right people. You know, step 3 is engaging them. And step 4 is, you know, building relationships. You want to build relationships with people. And, you know, a big thing in relationship building in the branding world and branding effectiveness is what we call brand likability, you know, building the brand's personality. And whatever the product is, we write a personality statement for the brand as if it were a person. Because it makes it easy for all the different creative people that are to work on it. And I always say, you know, brands are like people and people are like brands. And they measure a brand's likability with the Q-score. And it measures both products in terms of likability and people. You know, all the celebrities have a Q-score. And the celebrities with the highest Q-score make more money in movie, you know, make more money in movie contracts. You know, they get asked to endorse things. And, you know, the likability, the Q-score can go down. You know, I'm sure Oscar Pistorius' Q-score is, you know, underwater now. And after the Olympics last summer, you know, he was, you know, became very famous and had received a number of product endorsements. So I'm going to test your ability to judge a Q-score. And let's look at a few famous people and tell me, who has the higher Q-score? You know what? The guys say Angelina, but who's got the highest? Jen has the highest Q-score. Why is she more likable? Right, less provocative. Okay, so she's more like the girl next door, right? What else about? She wasn't the other woman. So that's another. She's a sympathetic character. You know, she got, she lost her guy. She is. But you know what? It's funny. Likability, well, we're going to get into the factors of that in a second. Anyway, let's look at two guys. Who's got the higher Q score? And why is Tom Hanks more likable? Yeah. And likability is important for people, and that's a key thing as a salesperson. Likability and brand personality are very key. You know, and what are the factors in likability from a branding perspective? You want to be attractive, but not too attractive that people hate you. You know, you want to be similar so people feel, gee, I can relate to that person. That's somebody I can imagine having a glass of wine with or a beer with. So the similarity principle is very powerful for brands. The empathy principle, you know, I think the person feels and can feel my pain, and I can understand them. So the empathy principle is important. And also the familiarity principle, I'm aware who this person is. You know, that people like things that are more familiar, it turns out. So that's one of the reasons why you want to, you know, build your profile as well. And you know, Hank seems very authentic, you know, so, you know, he seems like, you know, you like the guy. All right, so in building relationships, you want to always be clicking. Social scientists call salespeople and others that establish rapport quickly with somebody, they call them clickers. They have this ability to find connection. And the big secret of clickers are they find similarity. They find mutual interests or something in common with the other person. Super sellers, there's been a lot of research on this. They, in a meeting with prospects, they get on the same wavelength as the prospect. And you know, it's almost like they're in sync. And the breathing patterns, in some of the tests, they get the same breathing patterns. They mimic, whether it's consciously or unconsciously, they mimic the gestures even of the prospect. And they sort of, you know, get in a mind meld with them. And LinkedIn provides you with a lot of information about clients and prospects to build on this whole bond of similarity, because similarity is, you know, how people connect, and it really contributes to this whole likability factor that we were talking about. And, you know, LinkedIn also tells you a lot of ways you're connected, similar skills that you have with somebody, similar people that you know in common, groups, and they have this on the right-hand panel when you get to anyone. So you can also mine somebody's profile for detailed information, but you can also, you know, they graphically show you a lot of ideas. You always want to be connecting dots, and I think that, you know, LinkedIn provides a lot of information of how to connect the dots, of how people are connected to other people, what their interests are, what their groups are, a lot of things like that that can be very useful in terms of your pitch, whether it's in person or online. This is a point that Reid Hoffman made, the CEO of LinkedIn, in his book, The Startup of You, is this whole idea of giving little gifts. You know, we're not talking gifts in quotes here. Sending an article, offering advice, making an introduction, writing a rec on LinkedIn, offering to critique something. And there's a lot of studies that show that if you do at least 2 of these gifts before you make a sales pitch, and you'll be much more successful. One seller started out with 300 leads, did this gifting strategy, and then reached out to introduce herself and link, and got a 65% return rate. So now they're on a first level basis. So it's an interesting way to sort of build that initial relationship. I think we have a question here.
Yeah, just going back to your last slide for a minute, it just prompted me to think about something, or to another slide back. So how do you, in the selling world, a lot of us have accounts that are direct competitors.
Right.
What's any advice you have on that as far as how you kind of deal with, you know, it's like dating multiple people.
Right.
You know, it can be a lot of work when you're trying to put an article out there to get one person thinking.
Right.
But it might be what their direct competitor's doing, but you know, I mean, it's...
Right. Well, this is going to be a problem in the business that you're in. And I think that what you have to do is come up with a communication strategy, what your brand is, what you want to stand for, the kind of articles and things you're going to put out there, and realize it doesn't matter if your competitor sees them too. Because
I'm talking.
okay. Oh, I see. I see. Okay, so you're.
Yeah. And I'm thinking of it more or less from the like content I share. Like I kind of can figure that out as far
Right.
as, hey, this is an interesting article for either, right?
Right, right.
Whether it's one of them doing something well or one of them doing something poorly or whatever. But more like managing connections, like to Tom's points earlier about like Microsoft being a competitor of ours. Now I'm talking more to the people that I'm trying to engage with and connect with. I don't necessarily want, you know, CIO at Staples to also know that I'm having active conversations with CMO at Office Depot.
Right, right.
Or somebody at Walmart, you know, versus somebody else.
Yeah, but you can on settings disable letting people know certain things. So you can, if you want, you can like connections that you make, and you can eliminate some of that from your profile, from notifications. Yeah. So you can do that. But I don't know what else, any other ideas here. I think that yeah.
Well, because many of them are like insanely sensitive to each other and what the other one's doing or not doing. I mean, it's like everybody's scared of, you know, so like Lowe's and Walmart, not direct competitors, but they kind of are watching what each other are doing. And, you know, I don't go out and advertise that I'm, you know, or that I'm actively working with both of them. I mean, it can work both ways.
It can work both ways. I'm just thinking too, like when I was a client perspective, there were a lot of people, like ad agencies, for example, can't have a competitive account.
Right.
So, you know, if you're at an ad agency, they're not going to handle any of my competitors. But there were other suppliers we dealt with, obviously, that are meeting with. But I think, you know, I think it's changing a lot because I think historically a lot of executives were, you know, and I would never mention it in a meeting, you know, obviously. You got to downplay it. But I don't think you can worry about it too much. You can eliminate certain things from privacy, you know, from your settings.
It just becomes a full-time job. It's kind of like
Yeah.
Facebook, right? I mean,
Right.
you know, you can say that, oh, you can go put friends in groups. And
Right, right. Right, right.
The idea of brand, because if your brand is such that you are really an ultra connector and you're using this as a tool and it's really like, because if you only have like a couple of connections and they're competitors of each other, that feels sensitive. Like you're choosing those two companies versus if you're really active in a way, in a very specific way where it's your brand, whether it's the Maverick or the, you know, the other things. I think that can lend itself so that when someone sees it and they see that, oh, he's connecting there too, or he's in this group that they're in, then it feels more authentic. Like, hey, look, this is me. I do this socially. You need to, you know, like make it so that that is your brand, so that it's not. It doesn't feel like you're sharing secrets across. It's more, I share all this stuff publicly. Like I'd even, for me, I want to try to get this where it is public that I, you know, if you want to see that I'm connecting with new people, great, see it. Like, know that the information is public, because the other thing is that even if you change your privacy settings, we all know that privacy settings change really frequently. So it's like, if you put information out there, know that it is in the public domain the moment it gets out.
Right, I think it's a whole new world now, and I think I think this is part of doing business in the modern world, and I think those ideas, and what you want to do is build a strong enough, you already got Google brand behind you that's very, very powerful. You want to build a strong enough brand that they want to work with you, and they feel that they're getting the attention from you, that they're getting your smarts and your, you know, your unique selling proposition, however you've defined that. And I think that's what it's all about today, because I think people want to work with the best talent that they feel comfortable with, that they feel, they get outstanding service from, et cetera. Any other thoughts? Has anyone had an experience, or have you had an experience with a client saying, I don't like that you're, okay, how do you handle
Well, I think that what I was going to go back to is at a higher level, separating your persona at Google and then you're outside of Google. We're trained, there's a lot of things that we know that are internal to our company. So you also have to be very careful with when you go posting stuff and what you're putting out there, it's outside of the company. And I think that maybe there hasn't been enough thought given to the internal versus the external, and then how you bridge that gap. And I've struggled with that too, because just like if you have two competitors, how do you share information in the right way? You can also share too much out there, and you can have challenges. So you just have to give it a lot of thought and make sure that it's
Can you give us an example of how the decision making went and what you shared?
When I was dealing with GE in a past life, we had been talking. GE is ultra, worried about any information about them being shared.
Right.
And we were talking to Beth Comstock, the lady who you had up there, the CMO of General Electric.
Yeah.
And she came back. She's very much into social media, but to one of my colleagues, she said, that's actually an internal GE thing. We don't want that spoken about in the social. And she called LinkedIn and had it taken down.
Right.
So it was a big deal, and our team got chastised for it.
Right.
So you do need to be a little bit.
You need to be very careful with clients about things like that. What can we say? Make sure they've seen it before. Hey, I'm going to post this, and are you comfortable with it? And because a lot of cultures are like a GE culture, and it's more traditional, and they're very, very concerned about proprietary information. But I mean, part of your job is, we value that your information's private, and the trusted advisor.
One of the questions I have is just taking a step back. So I understand the importance of getting your brand out there.
Right.
Also, for the 2 years before I was here, I was doing social media management, and we went from 300 likes to 3 million likes on Facebook, right?
Right.
And my boss was always like, "Okay, great. Like, why? How is this making us money? How is this translating to sales?" I'm like, "But we have so many likes." The question is, like what sort of
Well, that's why I was showing the
data they have.
IBM story with the tracking page.
Right.
Is a big thing. Social media is so new, and that a key measurement is this whole idea of engagement, and how do you measure engagement? And so that's why, and it's a thorny problem in the whole branding world. How do you measure that? But a big thing that people are trying to do now is link it with a landing page so they can track new leads, what kind of communications they're giving to that potential lead, and then tracking conversion that it became a client. Now then there's the question of existing clients. Again, it's this whole idea, if you believe the whole branding Bible, that you want to have meaningful touch points, and you want to have consistent, ongoing touch points. And there's a lot of reasons advertisers view this as valuable, so that everything you communicate to the client is on brand and on strategy and consistent, and that it's ongoing, that you keep the relation, and it's a way of augmenting the personal relationship, how many times you call the client or prospects. So, but the thing that they're trying to do is this whole tracking it's a new area, and that's why they're trying to, get leads to a landing page, so then you can track conversion and things like that. So that's how you're making money. And I guess if you've got, it's this whole idea of, as I say, it's a whole new area of branding. So it's this whole thing of what are the other ways we can measure the effectiveness? So it's, in development right now.
I don't know how to speak into these. Okay.
That's working.
I think that also goes back to what Ketan was saying with campaigning and emails. Once we've done all of this and we've established ourselves on LinkedIn, whether or not Aaron thinks we have credible profiles, as long as prospects do, we can Kira and I found that we could use InMails as a way to establish the relationship and set up a meeting and kind of nurture that and go from there. I don't want to say too much because I don't want to. We're doing a presentation on it to a few people in this room, so I don't want to speak too much on it. But
how were you tracking the effectiveness? Can you not destroy your presentation, but give us some insight?
Well, of course, we're tracking response rates and the amount of meetings that we set from the outreach that we do, and then also tracking how the connections change from third degree to then first degree after sending one InMail. And also, it's been successful connecting with people that we've talked to in the past, other prospects, going out, connecting with those, and then seeing many of us work within regions, right?
Right.
So if you're connected with this many CIOs in your region, it makes it easier to send an email to a CIO also in that region who perhaps is connected to those two you're already connected with. So just kind of increasing your credibility through the connections that you have has helped.
Right. Yeah, and this also gives you a vehicle for ongoing communications. So that's what really starts making a difference when you figuring out what we talked about being on trend. We talked about being up to date. Figuring out what's of interest and periodically sending things so that there's these touches going on. When you think of brands that you do business with, they'll send follow-up emails. Then you'll get something after that. So they'll thought you might be interested in this. So you want to do a similar thing. That's what eventually works and keeps a relationship, augments the kind of personal touch that you can give. All right, so we were giving the little gifts. I know you're going to have a presentation after this on story, but you always want to be telling stories. Stories are sticky and disguise a sales message. And this is, a big, the whole big message of branding. You rarely see a commercial that talks about really what the product is and analyze it in any kind of rational way. It's really, they wrap the brands in stories. They tell stories that people connect with. And you want to use stories to tell about, here's a project that we had from a client. Here was the challenge. And then tell a story. And, the best stories, are stories you can film. You want to bring it to life so that people can imagine they were there. And the challenges, the obstacles. There's a lot of different story formats. The story format that, I used when I was telling that Barbara Corcoran story in the beginning, I could have just made one slide and said, here are 7 principles, that Barbara Corcoran, displayed. But no, I told a story about, her boyfriend left her and this and that and the other thing. And she wrote the Corcoran report and, the Donald Trump thing. But I was trying, you want to build it so people get a sense of the different phases, the struggle, the obstacles, and then how you solve the problem at the end. So you want to sort of bring that whole thing to life. And LinkedIn gives you a lot of avenues with the updates. Anybody can post an update. You can do it in groups. You can make it anonymous, a technology client or a retail client, so not mention a specific name if you want, but telling a story that's related to problems they're probably facing and how it was solved and how it was successful. You always want to be asking questions. Questions are a very powerful thing in advertising because, statements are passive, but a question begs involvement. Ronald Reagan famously asked the question, are you better off today than you were 4 years ago? Most people couldn't say yes, and, he got elected. And, but, questions can be very provocative because it gets people thinking, just like a story gets people thinking about the story and gets people all involved in the story. Questions get people involved. Where you just make statements, we did this, it doesn't really retain in the memory the same way. You always want to be tracking contacts, and LinkedIn has a tool. I don't know if a lot of people know about this, but you can track relationships, so you can make notes, reminders, how you met. You can tag them, put different tags on people, so you can go to LinkedIn and bring up all the people with a similar tag. Or you can transfer, you know, your first degree names to a CRM system that you use and like better to manage them. But you want to be tracking all these contacts. And as I mentioned earlier, you know, branders think of, you know, increasing touch points, you know, online, offline. You want to leverage your status updates. And as we talked about repurposing, you know, you can make it public plus Twitter. So anything you update, that it goes out to the public plus Twitter automatically. You can also tag things that your updates by in the body of it, you know, at company or at user, and that'll automatically go to them as well. If you have certain clients or prospects that you have permission to use their name, it's an easy way to sort of keep that touch going on. And I think it's important to, you know, how can you do all this, you know, and keep your day job too. So you always want to be automating. You know, you want to think of, you know, I say LinkedIn as the center because there's, you know, 280 million members and growing. It's the business site. But, you know, leverage all these other vehicles that you have as well too. You know, G+, you know, is good for circles and people that share similar passions and interests. Twitter, you know, I see as like a PR thing, you know, very short, you know, sentences. You can link, as you know, to other longer articles, but it's a very quick form of PR. YouTube, videos very powerful. Facebook, Pinterest is about pinning. I, you know, have a business where, you know, it's not so visible, but I have, you know, certain slogans that I use. You know, if you don't brand yourself, other people will, that I put with an interesting visual, you know, and put it on Pinterest. And so you always want to be moving the brand forward. You know, you want to be current. You want to be meaningful. Multimedia, figure out the different media you can use. Consistent, ongoing, and this whole idea of having an emotional connection. And my final thought is you always want to be visible. You know, branding is always about building visibility. Social selling, it's about building visibility, finding the right people, connecting with them, building relationships. And, you know, just like we talked about, there's a beauty premium, there's a visibility premium, both for products and for people. And, you know, people who are visible, research shows, people think they're better than people who aren't that visible in the industry. And LinkedIn gives you a vehicle, you know, for building visibility and building connections with your clients and prospects. So here's, I just threw this in, this is a client story of, again, branching out, you know, into areas outside the IT department for building business and companies. And so the whole idea was, you know, finding business leaders outside IT, interacting, you know, delivering, you know, industry, and again, this 2-gift idea or 3-gift idea, sending some interesting articles, sending some interesting things that they thought they would be interesting in.